the elevator doors slid open on the 7th floor of Mercy Crest Medical Center, and for a brief moment, Emily Carter forgot how to breathe. The smell of antiseptic and brewed coffee mixed in the air, sharp and unfamiliar. Her brand-new white nursing shoes squeaked softly against the polished tile as she stepped out, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. Her badge, Emily Carter, RN, caught the fluorescent light, still too clean, too new. It was her first official shift as a registered nurse. Dallas, Texas. One of the busiest hospitals in the city. No room for mistakes. Relax, she whispered to herself. You earned this. She hadn't slept much the night before. Her mind kept replaying everything she'd studied, every procedure, every warning her instructors had drilled into her. Confidence saves lives. Hesitation kills. But standing there now, surrounded by nurses who moved with effortless speed and doctors who spoke in clipped, authoritative tones, Emily felt like an imposter wearing a costume. Carter. The voice cut through her thoughts like a scalpel. She turned quickly, heart jumping. A tall man stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. His salt and pepper beard was neatly trimmed, his lab coat pristine. Dr. Marcus Bennett, Chief of Internal Medicine. Early 50s. Legendary. Feared. Respected. She straightened immediately. Yes, Dr. Bennett. He glanced at her badge, then at her face, lingering just a second too long. His lips curved, not quite a smile. You're the new nurse, he said flatly. Fresh out of school? Yes, sir. I graduated in May. He nodded slowly, as if confirming a private suspicion. We'll see how long that confidence lasts. Emily blinked. Excuse me. Dr. Bennett checked his watch. Room 712. Patient transfer from ICU. I want vitals taken, chart updated, labs double-checked. And please, he added, his voice dropping just enough to sting, don't get creative. Her cheeks warmed. Of course, doctor. He stepped past her without another word, already dictating notes into his phone. Emily stood frozen for half a second, then forced herself to move. First shift nerves, she told herself. He didn't mean anything by it. But something about the way he'd looked at her made her stomach tighten. Room 712 was quiet when she entered. The blinds were half open, letting in the pale Texas morning light. The patient lay propped up against the pillows, hands folded calmly over his stomach. White male, early 60s, neatly combed gray hair, sharp eyes that followed her every movement. Good morning, Emily said softly, pasting on her best professional smile. I'm Emily, your nurse today. Morning, the man replied. His voice was steady, measured. First day? She paused, surprised. Is it that obvious? He smiled faintly. You still hold your clipboard like it might run away. She laughed, the tension easing just a bit. Guilty. She introduced herself properly, explained the routine, and began checking his vitals. His name was Thomas Hale. Admitted overnight for cardiac monitoring after a minor episode, precautionary, according to the chart. You're very calm for someone in a hospital bed, Emily noted as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, he replied. On both sides of the bed. She looked up. You're a doctor? No, he said smoothly. Something like that. Before she could ask more, the door swung open. Dr. Bennett walked in without knocking. Emily stepped aside immediately. Vitals are stable, doctor. Blood pressure is. I'll read it myself, he interrupted, eyes flicking dismissively toward her clipboard. He turned to the patient. "Mr. Hale. How are we feeling today?" "Observant," Mr. Hale said calmly. Dr. Bennett chuckled. "That's one way to put it." He glanced back at Emily. "You can wait outside." Her mouth opened slightly. "I was just..." "Outside," he repeated, firmer now. Emily hesitated, then nodded and stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. The door didn't close fully. Through the narrow gap, she could hear their voices. "New hires," Dr. Bennett said with a low laugh. "They come in thinking textbooks prepare them for real medicine." Mr. Hale didn't respond immediately. "She seems polite," the patient finally said. "Polite doesn't save lives," Dr. Bennett replied. "Experience does. And confidence. Two things that can't be taught in a classroom." Emily felt the words like a slap. She stared down at her hands, willing herself not to cry. "This is just how it is," she thought. "Pay your dues." A few minutes later, the door opened fully. Dr. Bennett walked past her without acknowledgement. Mr. Hale met her eyes as she re-entered the room. His expression had changed, no longer mild, but thoughtful, almost calculating. "You handled that well," he said quietly. She shrugged, forcing a smile. "It's fine. I'm here to learn." He studied her for a long moment. "Be careful who you learn from." Something in his tone sent a chill through her. Emily nodded, unaware that this quiet patient had just witnessed more than a bruised ego, and that her very first shift had set in motion a reckoning that would shake the entire hospital. By noon, Mercy Crest Medical Center was alive in a way Emily Carter hadn't anticipated. Stretchers rolled past like rushing tides. Monitors beeped in overlapping rhythms. Phones rang, overhead announcements echoed, and the nurse's station buzzed with clipped conversations and half-finished sentences. Everyone moved with purpose, except Emily, who felt like she was constantly half a step behind. Not because she didn't know what to do, but because she was being watched. She felt it first when she approached the medication room. Two nurses stopped talking the moment she reached for the door. One of them, a woman in her late 30s with tired eyes, gave her a sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach her face. "Careful," the woman said softly, glancing down the hallway. "Dr. Bennett's making rounds." Emily nodded, unsure what to say. "Thank you." As she measured out the dosage for Mr. Hale, her hands were steady. She double-checked the chart, verified the medication, followed protocol to the letter. Yet when she stepped back into the corridor, she found Dr. Bennett leaning against the wall, arms folded, watching her like a hawk. "You're slow," he said casually. She froze. "I'm following medication safety guidelines." "Speed comes with competence," he replied. "Patients don't have time for hesitation." Emily swallowed. "Understood." He pushed off the wall and walked away, leaving her standing there, cheeks burning. A passing resident avoided her gaze altogether. Inside room 712, Mr. Hale looked up as she entered. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said automatically, then hesitated. "I mean, yes, sir." He tilted his head slightly. That didn't sound convincing. She exhaled slowly. "I'm just adjusting." He studied her, the silence stretching. Adjustment shouldn't feel like humiliation. Her eyes flicked toward the door. "Please don't make this harder." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Fair enough." As the day went on, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Dr. Bennett questioned her in front of others, correcting her tone rather than her technique. He rewrote notes she'd documented accurately, leaving her name conspicuously absent. During a team briefing, he praised a male nurse for an idea Emily had suggested minutes earlier, without acknowledgement. "Didn't you say that already?" one nurse whispered to her afterward. Emily nodded. "I guess it sounded better coming from him." The nurse sighed. "Welcome to Mercy Crest." By mid-afternoon, Emily felt like she was shrinking. Every step, every word, every decision seemed to carry invisible weight. She noticed how other nurses avoided standing beside her when Dr. Bennett was nearby, how conversations abruptly ended when she joined them. At the water fountain, she overheard two residents speaking in hushed tones. "She's his new project," one said. "Why her?" "Fresh. Won't fight back." Emily pretended not to hear, her hands trembling as she filled a paper cup. Back in room 712, Mr. Hale watched her closely as she adjusted his four. "They're circling you," he said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What?" He nodded toward the hallway. "The way people stop talking when you enter. The way he corrects you when there's nothing to correct." She forced a small laugh. "You sound paranoid." "I sound experienced," he replied. She hesitated, then said, "He's the chief of internal medicine. He's earned the right to be demanding. Demanding is not the same as demeaning." Emily looked away. "If I complain, I'll be labeled difficult. Or worse." Mr. Hale was quiet for a moment. "You think silence protects you?" She shrugged. "It keeps me employed." A sudden alarm blared from down the hall, jolting them both. Nurses rushed past, urgency thick in the air. Emily checked the chart again, grounding herself in the routine. Later, during evening rounds, Dr. Bennett entered room 712 again. This time, he didn't ask Emily to leave. "Vitals?" he asked sharply. She reported them calmly. He muttered. "Did you verify the labs yourself?" "Yes, doctor." "Twice." "Twice." He raised an eyebrow. "Or you just like to waste time?" Before Emily could respond, Mr. Hale spoke. "She's thorough," he said evenly. "I appreciate that." Dr. Bennett glanced at him, surprised, then smiled tightly. "Patients appreciate a lot of things. Doesn't mean they understand medicine." Mr. Hale held his gaze. "No. But they understand respect." The room went still. Emily's heart hammered in her chest. No patient had ever spoken to Dr. Bennett like that, at least not without consequences. Dr. Bennett chuckled, the sound sharp. "You're very opinionated for someone in a hospital gown." "I've earned my opinions," Mr. Hale replied. Dr. Bennett leaned closer to Emily. "Make sure he stays comfortable," he said pointedly. "We don't want any misunderstandings." After he left, Emily let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Mr. Hale. "I shouldn't have put you in that position." "You didn't," he said calmly. "He did." She met his eyes, searching. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," he said, voice low, "people reveal who they are when they think no one important is watching." Emily frowned. "And you're watching?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it this time. "Very closely." She didn't realize it yet, but the whispers in the hallway weren't just about her anymore. They were about Dr. Bennett, and the quiet patient who had begun taking notes in his own way. By the third day of her rotation on the 7th floor, Emily Carter learned something no handbook ever mentioned: reputations could weigh more than credentials. Dr. Marcus Bennett's reputation, in particular, hung over Mercy Crest Medical Center like a storm cloud everyone pretended not to see. He built this department, a charge nurse told Emily in a low voice during a rare quiet moment at the station. Protocols, staffing models, research grants. Half the equipment you use? He signed off on it. Emily nodded, pretending to absorb the information while charting. So that's why everyone's afraid of him. The nurse gave a tired smile. Afraid isn't the word. Indebted. Dr. Bennett arrived precisely at 7 every morning, and when he did, the floor subtly shifted. Conversation stopped. Shoulders straightened. Residents snapped to attention like cadets. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no, and had no intention of starting now. He had trained at prestigious institutions, published papers that were still cited in medical journals, and lectured internationally. But beneath the accolades was something harder to quantify: control. He decided who advanced, who stagnated, and who quietly disappeared from the hospital's ecosystem. Emily felt that control every time he looked at her. "Why is this note phrased like that?" he asked during rounds, tapping her chart with a pen. "It follows hospital documentation standards," she replied calmly. He smirked. "Standards are minimums. Excellence is instinct." "Yes, doctor." He turned to the residents. "This is what happens when we lower the bar to fill quotas." The words landed like a bomb. No one reacted. No one spoke. Emily's ears rang. After rounds, a young resident approached her hesitantly. "Don't take it personally." She gave a weak smile. "Hard not to. He's always been like this," the resident said. "But once he decides you're competent, he'll back you for life." Emily watched Dr. Bennett disappear down the hallway. "And if he never decides that?" The resident didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Emily was assigned to assist with a complex patient transfer. She prepared meticulously, anticipating every step. As the team assembled, Dr. Bennett scanned the room. "Where's Carter?" he asked. "I'm here, doctor," Emily said, stepping forward. He looked past her. "I need someone experienced." Her throat tightened. "I've completed all required training for this procedure." "Training isn't experience," he replied curtly. "Stand aside." A senior nurse took her place without comment. From the corner of the room, Emily watched as the transfer unfolded. She noticed a subtle misstep, a line not secured properly. Her instinct screamed to speak up. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Don't challenge him." Moments later, an alarm sounded. Chaos erupted as the team scrambled to correct the error. Dr. Bennett barked orders, his face hard. Emily moved automatically, stepping in to stabilize the line. Her hands were steady, her actions precise. For a brief second, Dr. Bennett looked at her, really looked at her. Then he turned away. Afterward, no one mentioned her intervention. Not in the report. Not in conversation. The incident was framed as a minor complication, quickly resolved. Back in room 712, Mr. Hale listened as Emily checked his vitals. "They didn't thank you," he said quietly. She paused. "How did you know?" "I watched the cameras in the hallway," he replied casually. She laughed nervously. "You shouldn't be doing that." "Old habits," he said with a shrug. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I did my job." "Your job," he said, "and his." Emily sighed. "He's untouchable." Mr. Hale raised an eyebrow. "No one is untouchable." That evening, Emily stayed late to finish charting. The hospital lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the floor. As she packed up, she overheard Dr. Bennett speaking in his office, the door slightly ajar. "She's not a good fit," he said into the phone. Too hesitant. Too soft. A pause. "No, not yet. But I'll document enough concerns. It won't be hard." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. She walked away quietly, her mind racing. Document enough concerns. The words echoed. He wasn't just criticizing her, he was building a case. The next morning, an email awaited her. Performance review scheduled. No context. No explanation. Just Dr. Bennett's name at the bottom. Her hands shook as she closed the laptop. In room 712, Mr. Hale noticed immediately. "They're escalating," he said. Emily nodded, her voice barely audible. "I think he wants me gone." Mr. Hale leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Then he's overplaying his hand." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "Men who believe they never miss often forget who's keeping score." Emily didn't fully understand what he meant, but for the first time since her first shift, she felt something other than fear. She felt the quiet beginning of a storm. By the end of the week, Mr. Thomas Hale had become the calm center of Emily Carter's increasingly unsteady world. Room 712 was the only place in Mercy Crest Medical Center where her shoulders relaxed, where her breath slowed. Outside that door, every hallway felt like a test she was destined to fail. Inside, time seemed to move differently, measured, deliberate, observant. "You're quieter today," Mr. Hale remarked as Emily checked his chart. She smiled faintly. "You notice everything." "I notice patterns," he replied. "And you're thinking before you speak now." She didn't deny it. "I've learned that silence can be safer." "Safer," he echoed. "Or more dangerous." She paused, glancing at him. "You really don't act like a typical patient." "I told you," he said, "I've spent a lifetime around hospitals." Emily adjusted his fore, then hesitated. "What do you do, Mr. Hale?" He looked out the window, watching the Dallas skyline shimmer in the afternoon heat. "I manage people." "That's vague," she said, half smiling. "It's accurate." As the day unfolded, Emily noticed subtle changes around the floor. A nurse who had barely acknowledged her earlier now asked if she needed help. A resident lingered a moment longer during rounds, making eye contact instead of avoiding it. And then there were the cameras. She noticed them because Mr. Hale noticed them. "Did you know that camera has a blind spot?" he said casually, pointing toward the corner of the ceiling. Emily stiffened. "How would you know that?" He smiled. "Because someone once paid a lot of money to make sure it did." She stared at him. "You're joking." "Am I?" Before she could press further, Dr. Bennett entered the room, his presence instantly shifting the air. "Mr. Hale," he said smoothly. "How are we feeling today?" "Still alive," Mr. Hale replied. "Which seems to disappoint some people." Dr. Bennett chuckled. "We aim for efficiency, not miracles." His gaze slid to Emily. "I see you're still assigned here." "Yes, doctor." "For now," he added pointedly. "We'll be reviewing staff assignments soon." Emily's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Dr. Bennett turned back to the patient. "Any discomfort? Dizziness? Confusion?" "No," Mr. Hale said. "Just curiosity." "Oh?" "I'm curious why my nurse is being evaluated when her care has been exemplary." The room went still. Dr. Bennett's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Personnel matters are not patient concerns. Care quality is," Mr. Hale replied evenly. Dr. Bennett straightened. I assure you, Mr. Hale, everything here is under control. Mr. Hale nodded slowly. That's what people usually say right before they lose it. Dr. Bennett laughed, sharp and dismissive. You've been watching too many movies. On the contrary, Mr. Hale said. I prefer documentaries. After Dr. Bennett left, Emily exhaled shakily. You don't have to do this. Yes, he said simply. I do. That night, Emily stayed late again, reviewing notes, triple-checking charts. She couldn't afford mistakes, not now. As she walked past the administrative wing, she noticed lights on in an office she'd never seen occupied before. Inside, silhouettes moved behind frosted glass. The next morning, the atmosphere shifted again. Dr. Bennett was quieter, more measured. He didn't single Emily out during rounds. He didn't praise her either, but the silence felt deliberate. During lunch, a senior nurse leaned close. What did you do? Nothing, Emily said. The nurse frowned. Dr. Bennett asked for archived footage from the 7th floor. Emily's pulse quickened. Why? The nurse shrugged. He didn't say. Later, in room 712, Mr. Hale was dressed, not in a hospital gown, but in pressed slacks and a crisp white shirt. A folded jacket lay on the chair. You're being discharged? Emily asked, surprised. Soon, he said. Her heart sank unexpectedly. That's good news. Yes, he agreed. An inconvenient timing. She hesitated. For me? For him, Mr. Hale said. Before she could respond, a hospital administrator entered, middle-aged, nervous, deferential. Mr. Hale, the man said, clearing his throat. Everything is ready. Mr. Hale stood slowly, then turned to Emily. You should come with us. I can't, she said. I'm on shift. You'll be fine, the administrator said quickly. This is authorized. Emily followed them down a hallway she'd never walked before, past offices she didn't know existed. They stopped outside a large conference room. Through the glass walls, Emily saw Dr. Bennett seated at the table, reviewing documents. He looked up and froze. Mr. Hale stepped forward. Doctor, he said calmly. We need to talk. Dr. Bennett stood abruptly. Who are you? Mr. Hale smiled, not kindly. The man who's been watching, he said. And the man who decides whether this hospital keeps calling itself Mercy Crest. Emily's breath caught. In that moment, the silent patient was silent no more, and everything Emily thought she understood about power, protection, and survival inside those walls shattered. The reckoning had begun. The conference room felt colder than the rest of the hospital. Emily stood just inside the doorway, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Dallas skyline, sharp and indifferent, while inside, tension pressed down like a weight on her chest. Dr. Marcus Bennett was the first to recover. This is highly inappropriate, he said, straightening his coat. This meeting was not scheduled through my office. Mr. Hale took a seat at the head of the table without asking permission. The hospital administrator remained standing, hands clasped tightly, eyes darting between the two men. Sit down, doctor, Mr. Hale said calmly. Dr. Bennett laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're a patient. Or you were. You don't get to. I'm the majority shareholder of Mercy Crest Medical Center, Mr. Hale interrupted. And the interim chairman of the board. Silence crashed into the room. Emily felt dizzy. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. Dr. Bennett's smile faltered, then returned, forced, brittle. That's surprising. It shouldn't be, Mr. Hale replied. My name is on the West Wing. Dr. Bennett's eyes flicked toward Emily, then back. If this is about staffing grievances, we have formal channels. Mr. Hale leaned forward. This is about conduct. The administrator cleared his throat. Dr. Bennett, several concerns have been raised regarding your interactions with junior staff. Dr. Bennett's jaw tightened. Concerns raised by whom? Mr. Hale glanced at Emily, not accusingly, but invitingly. Emily swallowed hard. Every instinct told her to stay silent. To survive. But she remembered the mis-secured line. The whispered conversations. The email scheduling her review. The way her name vanished from reports. She stepped forward. By me, she said quietly. Dr. Bennett turned fully toward her now. You should be very careful. Mr. Hale's voice sharpened. Threatening an employee in front of leadership is not careful. I'm not threatening, Dr. Bennett snapped. I'm warning. Emily's hands trembled, but she kept going. You've questioned my competence publicly without cause. You've reassigned my work, erased my contributions, and suggested I don't belong here. Dr. Bennett scoffed. This is about sensitivity. Medicine is demanding. Not everyone is built for accountability. Mr. Hale finished. Dr. Bennett slammed his hand on the table. I built this department. I've saved thousands of lives. And you've broken careers, Mr. Hale said. Quietly. Efficiently. With paperwork. The administrator slid a folder across the table. We reviewed footage from the 7th floor. Dr. Bennett stiffened. Your comments, the administrator continued, your directives, your documented concerns, they don't align with clinical performance. Emily stared at the folder, realization dawning. The cameras. Dr. Bennett exhaled sharply. This is a witch hunt. No, Mr. Hale said. This is oversight. Dr. Bennett stood, pacing. You think one nurse's feelings outweigh decades of service? Mr. Hale rose slowly, meeting him eye to eye. I think patterns outweigh reputations. Dr. Bennett's voice dropped. You don't understand what it takes to lead. I understand power very well, Mr. Hale replied. And how it corrupts when left unchecked. Dr. Bennett turned to Emily, his eyes hard. If you push this, you'll never work in this city again. The words hung in the air, raw, undeniable. Emily felt something inside her snap. I was already afraid, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. You took that from me too. There's nothing left for you to threaten. Mr. Hale nodded once. That's enough. He turned to the administrator. Effective immediately, Dr. Bennett is placed on administrative leave pending full investigation. Dr. Bennett laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You can't be serious. I am, Mr. Hale said. And this conversation is being recorded. The color drained from Dr. Bennett's face. Emily realized then that the real line hadn't been crossed by her speaking up, it had been crossed long before, by a man who believed no one important was watching. Security arrived quietly, respectfully. Dr. Bennett was escorted out, still protesting, still certain this was a mistake. As the door closed, Emily sank into a chair, her knees weak. I didn't plan this, she whispered. Mr. Hale looked at her kindly. You didn't need to. You just told the truth. She met his eyes. What happens now? He smiled faintly. Now the hospital has to decide who it really protects. Outside the conference room, whispers were already spreading, faster, louder, impossible to contain. And somewhere between relief and fear, Emily realized something terrifying and liberating. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the moment when silence stopped working. The hospital did not sleep that night. By the time Emily Carter returned to the 7th floor, the air felt charged, as if Mercy Crest itself had inhaled and was holding its breath. Phones rang longer than usual. Doors closed softly, then reopened just as quickly. People spoke in careful tones, choosing words the way one might step across thin ice. Administrative leave. Those words had traveled faster than any code blue. Emily felt eyes on her as she walked past the nurse's station. Some were curious. Some were cautious. A few carried something closer to awe. No one spoke to her directly, not yet. She slipped into room 712 out of instinct, forgetting for a moment that it was no longer her patient's room. It was empty. The bed had been stripped, the monitor disconnected, the name wiped clean from the whiteboard. The quiet felt heavier without Mr. Hale's steady presence. For the first time since this began, Emily felt exposed. An hour later, an email landed in every staff inbox. Subject: Departmental Review and Interim Leadership Update. Sender: Office of the Board. It was clinical. Polished. Carefully neutral. Dr. Bennett was under investigation pending findings related to professional conduct and ethical compliance. An interim head would be announced shortly. Staff were reminded of reporting protections and encouraged to come forward. Encouraged. Emily sat staring at the screen, pulse racing. Come forward. How many would? How many could afford to? She didn't have to wait long to find out. By morning, stories surfaced quietly, then not so quietly. A resident who'd been reassigned after challenging a diagnosis. A nurse who'd received a sudden poor evaluation after refusing to falsify a timestamp. A research fellow whose paper had been published under someone else's name. Patterns. Dr. Bennett's office door was sealed. Security badges were temporarily deactivated. His name was scrubbed from the daily leadership roster like it had never been there at all. But the real shock came just before noon. Emily was restocking supplies when she felt a presence beside her. "You're going to need to come with me," said a woman in a tailored navy suit. Her badge read Internal Compliance. Emily's stomach dropped. "Am I in trouble?" The woman studied her carefully. "That depends on how honest you plan to be." They walked past departments Emily had never entered before, past finance, past legal, past glass offices where people whispered into phones and stopped when she passed. They reached a boardroom far larger than the conference room from the day before. And there, seated at the center, was Mr. Hale. He looked different now. No hospital bracelet. No four. Just authority, quiet, immovable. "Emily," he said, standing. "Thank you for coming." The compliance officer closed the door behind them. "What's happening?" Emily asked. Mr. Hale gestured for her to sit. "What should have happened years ago?" He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a timeline: complaints, reviews, resignations, settlements. Some were sealed. Others had been quietly buried. "This didn't start with you," he said. "But it may end with you." Emily scrolled, her hands shaking. Why wasn't any of this stopped? Mr. Hale's jaw tightened. Because Dr. Bennett was profitable. The word landed like a slap. He brought in grants, prestige, rankings. And hospitals, like any other institution, can convince themselves that results excuse behavior. Emily looked up. You knew. I suspected, he corrected. That's why I admitted myself here. Her eyes widened. You staged your hospitalization. I arranged a legitimate admission, he said calmly. And I watched. A chill ran through her. That's unsettling. He nodded. Necessary. The compliance officer spoke for the first time. Dr. Bennett's attorneys are already framing this as retaliation. They'll say he was targeted. Because he's black? Emily asked quietly. Mr. Hale didn't flinch. Because it complicates the narrative. Emily's chest tightened. I never wanted this to become about race. It already was, Mr. Hale said gently. Just not in the way people are comfortable discussing. He leaned forward. Power doesn't erase identity. It hides behind it. Emily swallowed hard. Here's the twist, Mr. Hale continued. The board didn't want me to act. She stared at him. What? They wanted a quiet resolution. A severance. An exit with dignity. His eyes hardened. I refused. Why? She asked. Because silence is how systems rot, he said. And because you weren't the first young nurse he underestimated. Emily felt something shift inside her. What happens now? Mr. Hale exhaled slowly. Now this becomes public. Her breath caught. Public? External auditors. Regulatory review. Media, if necessary. Fear flashed through her. My name will be protected, he said firmly. But your voice matters. She hesitated. What if it ruins my career? Mr. Hale met her gaze. It might delay it. But it won't define it. Outside the boardroom, raised voices echoed faintly. Dr. Bennett had returned, with lawyers. Emily stood. He's not done. No, Mr. Hale agreed. And neither are we. As she walked back onto the floor, Emily realized the scandal wasn't just about one doctor. It was about a hospital forced to look at itself in the mirror. And for the first time, Emily wasn't afraid of what it might see. The reckoning did not arrive quietly. It arrived with subpoenas, sealed emails, and conference calls scheduled at odd hours. It arrived in the form of auditors walking through Mercy Crest Medical Center with neutral expressions and government-issued badges. It arrived when a local news van parked across the street, its satellite dish pointed skyward like an accusation. Emily Carter watched it all unfold from behind the nurse's station, her hands steady even as her pulse raced. Dr. Marcus Bennett had returned to the hospital, but not as the authority he once was. He entered flanked by two attorneys, his posture rigid, his face unreadable. Staff parted as he passed, not out of fear this time, but uncertainty. The power he once carried had thinned, stretched tight by scrutiny. Emily felt his eyes find her. They held there for a long moment. Later that day, she was summoned to a formal hearing. The room was packed. Board members sat along one side, compliance officers along the other. Dr. Bennett sat at the far end, immaculate in his suit, legal team whispering at his shoulders. Emily took her seat, spine straight, hands folded. Ms. Carter, the chairwoman began, thank you for coming forward. Dr. Bennett's attorney spoke quickly. We object to the framing. This is an internal disagreement inflated into a spectacle. Emily inhaled, then spoke before fear could catch her. This isn't about disagreement. It's about misuse of authority. Dr. Bennett leaned forward. You misunderstand strong leadership. No, Emily said. I experienced it. She described the public corrections, the erased documentation, the threats delivered in private. She spoke calmly, precisely, the way she'd been trained to document patient care. Facts. Dates. Patterns. As she spoke, other voices followed. A resident corroborated her account. A senior nurse admitted she'd altered reports out of fear. A former fellow appeared via video call, describing how her research had been appropriated. The room shifted. Dr. Bennett's face darkened, then hardened. "This is character assassination," he said. "I demanded excellence. They couldn't handle it." Mr. Hale, seated among the board, spoke evenly. "Excellence doesn't require intimidation." Dr. Bennett turned sharply. "You orchestrated this." "Yes," Mr. Hale said. "And I regret not doing it sooner." The hearing adjourned after 6 hours. Outside, reporters waited. Emily slipped out through a side exit, heart pounding, the weight of what she'd done settling over her like a second skin. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her phone buzzed just after midnight. "Unknown number, you think you've won?" She stared at the screen, then deleted the message without replying. The next morning, the decision was announced. Dr. Marcus Bennett was terminated for gross misconduct and ethical violations. His medical license would be reviewed by the state board. Several administrators were placed on notice. The hospital released a statement emphasizing accountability, transparency, and reform. The staff reaction was complicated. Some celebrated quietly. Others mourned the fall of a titan. A few whispered that he'd been set up. Emily walked the halls feeling strangely invisible and hypervisible at the same time. At the nurse's station, the charge nurse pulled her aside. "You did something brave." Emily shook her head. "I did something necessary." Dr. Bennett was escorted out later that afternoon. This time, no one spoke. As he passed Emily, he stopped. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "this system eats people alive." Emily met his gaze. "Then maybe it's time it choked." He left without another word. In the days that followed, changes came swiftly. Mandatory leadership training. Anonymous reporting channels that actually worked. A review of promotion practices. And then came the offer. Mr. Hale asked Emily to meet him in his office, the one with her name now on a temporary placard outside the door. "I don't want to manage," she said immediately. He smiled. "Good. That's why you should." She laughed despite herself. "I'm barely surviving my first month." "And yet," he said, "you shifted an institution." She thought of the younger nurses watching her now, measuring what was possible. "I'll think about it," she said. As she left the office, Emily caught her reflection in the glass, no longer the trembling new hire from her first shift. Still nervous. Still learning. But no longer silent. The reckoning had stripped away illusions, about power, about safety, about who gets to decide what behavior is acceptable. And in its wake, something fragile but real had begun to grow. A hospital that, for the first time in years, was listening. 3 months after Dr. Marcus Bennett left Mercy Crest Medical Center for the last time, the hospital looked the same from the outside. The glass facade still reflected the Dallas sky. Ambulances still lined the emergency bay. The signs still glowed blue at night, promising care, safety, mercy. But inside, everything was different. Emily Carter noticed it in the small things first. People knocked before entering rooms. Residents asked questions without fear of sounding foolish. Nurses corrected physicians openly, and were thanked for it. Meetings ran longer, messier, and louder, but they ended with decisions made in the light instead of whispered in corners. change, she learned, was rarely graceful. Emily was no longer the new nurse. She was simply Emily, trusted, consulted, occasionally disagreed with. Her evaluations were meticulous and fair, no longer weaponized. Her name stayed on her work. The scandal, however, had not faded. Dr. Bennett's case became a lightning rod. Medical forums debated it fiercely. Some framed him as a fallen genius undone by a single accusation. Others called him a symbol of unchecked authority finally held accountable. Race, power, hierarchy, and silence were dissected endlessly. Emily refused interviews. "I didn't do this for attention," she told Mr. Hale. "I know," he said. "That's why it matters." The hospital board released the final audit findings in early spring. They were damning, not only of Dr. Bennett, but of the systems that protected him. Settlements were reopened. Apologies were issued, some public, some private, some far too late. Mr. Hale stepped down as interim chairman soon after. His last day, he stopped by the 7th floor. "You look steadier," he said, smiling. "I had a good teacher," Emily replied. He shook his head. "You taught me something too." "What's that?" "That power is loud," he said. "But courage is persistent." Before he left, he handed her a folded document. Inside was an acceptance letter to a leadership development program sponsored by the hospital. Emily stared at it. "I didn't apply for this." "No," he said. "You qualified for it." She accepted. Dr. Bennett, meanwhile, disappeared from public view. His license was suspended pending retraining and review. His lawyers fought hard, but the record was clear. He issued a statement, carefully worded, non-apologetic, defiant in its own way. Some staff still defended him. Emily understood why. He had saved lives. He had been brilliant. And yet, brilliance had not excused cruelty. Excellence had not justified fear. One afternoon, Emily found herself back in room 712. A new patient lay there now, anxious, clutching the bed rails. Emily smiled gently and introduced herself, just as she had months before. "First time in a hospital?" she asked. The patient nodded. "You're in good hands," Emily said. And for the first time, she knew it was true, not just because of her, but because of the system around her. Later that week, a young nurse approached her hesitantly. "I heard what you did," the nurse said. "I didn't think people like us could make a difference." Emily met her eyes. "We can. But it costs something." "What did it cost you?" Emily thought for a moment. "Comfort." The hospital held a town hall not long after, a final, symbolic gesture. Leadership stood before staff and acknowledged what had been allowed to happen. Not just once. Repeatedly. "We failed," the CEO said. "And we're committed to not failing again." Some applauded. Some didn't. Healing, Emily realized, wasn't unanimous. As she walked out that evening, the Dallas sun setting behind her, Emily felt the weight of everything that had happened, not as a burden, but as grounding. She had entered Mercy Crest afraid to speak. She left each day knowing her voice mattered. The hospital had learned a painful lesson, that silence protects the powerful, not the principled. That culture is shaped not by mission statements, but by what people are willing to challenge. And Emily had learned something too. That courage doesn't arrive fully formed. It grows in moments where staying quiet feels easier, but costs too much. The scandal would fade. Headlines would move on. New crises would come. But in the quiet between shifts, in the steady rhythm of care, something enduring remained. A line had been crossed. And it would not be crossed again.